There's no secret formula for scaling support and boosting customer satisfaction. But there is the all-new Service Hub from HubSpot, bringing service and support together in one powerful platform so you can deliver the best experiences possible and free up reps' time with an AI-powered help desk. Also, you can keep customers happy. Secrets out. Service Hub is a game changer. Visit HubSpot.com/service to learn more. Welcome, everybody. It's Sunday, and you know what that means. I'm Jon Weigell, and this is the weekend edition of the Hustle Daily Show. VR has gained an astounding amount of popularity since the launch of the Oculus Rift in 2012. Every major tech and gaming company has invested in the technology, but many startups and small game studios have also spent big on it. Enter Owlchemy Labs, an extended reality studio founded in 2010 that created wildly popular VR games such as Job Simulator, Vacation Simulator, and Rick and Morty Virtual Reality. As extended reality encroaches more on our daily reality, CEOwl of Owlchemy Labs, Andrew Eiche, would like to make extended reality games and platforms more accessible than ever before. But is that an easy job to do currently in the tumultuous gaming industry where layoffs are becoming more common? And how can the industry press forward when the innovation is seemingly hard to find from the big studio players? Well, we have Andrew here today, and we're going to find out. All right, welcome, Andrew. Pleasure to have you here. How are you doing today?
Doing well. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So first thing I wanted to start off with, as the CEOwl of Owlchemy Labs now, how did you first break into the extended reality field?
Yeah, so before I was actually at Owlchemy Labs, I was at a large consulting firm, Booz Allen Hamilton, and I was there early days. We had this developer bring in a Oculus DK1. We loved that thing. And so we started making stuff for it without even like a client or anything. And we made this like through the bloodstream. It's called CEOwl. It's like this ancient thing. Went to Oculus Connect 1, like met a bunch of cool people there. We made like a Roman Coliseum thing. This was all like such early days, like DK1, DK2.
Whoa.
And so did a lot of that work. And then interestingly enough, at the time, we actually did a model of virus propagation through a hospital if you don't wash your hands, right? So it's like this little diorama you peeked into, and like green poison went around with these agents. Anyway,
it's great. Very cheerful. That's nice.
It's really good. This is 2012. This is like pre-COVID. We didn't even know this could happen, right? So did that, went and showed it to some senior people at the company. And at the time they were just like, nah, this isn't for us. Like, we don't really want to do this. So I was like, okay, got it. Took a detour, actually went and worked for a board game company for a year. And then Alex and Devin, the two founders of Owlchemy, the original founders, I was at Washington, D.C. at the time. And they're like, hey, if you move down to Austin, Texas, we have a job for you. Not only do we have a job for you, you'll work on this Rick and Morty game, right? And so I moved down and I helped them close out Job Simulator, like helped with polish and stuff, and also the garage job, and then went to do Rick and Morty, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's kind of the arc there, the story.
Yeah. Wow, what a journey. And you really got in very early because, you know, VR was always kind of a hot button thing the past 10 years, but it really kind of spawned into everybody knowing about it and everybody being able to do it within the last maybe few years. Do you think that right now that extended reality is more accessible than it's ever been to the public generally?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, the Quest had a price drop even. So from a financial perspective, it's good.
Sure.
In general, right, we're seeing that kind of move. So for instance, we have the standalone headsets, right? That's kind of always been the dream. And it actually happened a little bit earlier than we had originally anticipated. We wanted the standalone headsets to hit basically, you know, a few years ago. And they actually hit much, much earlier, which is awesome because you want that like take it and go functionality, right? And then on top of that, you're starting to see even the other barriers start to disappear. You know, Owlchemy Labs, our next stuff is hand tracking. We're really big on hand tracking. And so that's kind of where that's headed, is to just welcome more and more people and make it more and more accessible. Because honestly, like, there are a lot of people who know how to use video game controllers, but there aren't a ton. Like, the difference between like a large market and mass market is amazing, right? And so you're talking about the difference between hundreds of millions and billions of people. And so once you can get rid of the controllers are still there. They're peripheral or there's something else. But once you get that, it gets even more accessible. So you're starting to see all these pushes into making this medium something that anyone could just spend some money and get started on. And as you were talking about it, like when we first started, right, it was, set up a room, set up video drivers. In fact, the DK1 pretty much just worked like a second screen for a while, right? It was like very early thing. And then later on, it got more and more complicated and you were drilling holes in your wall and everything. So really happy on the kind of the arc of this technology.
Yeah, it's become a lot more portable, right? We even saw like, Vision Pro come out this past year, and that's kind of extended the accessibility. Maybe not from a price point, but extended the accessibility in terms of anybody can try to use this, and the UI is becoming a little more friendly maybe than it has been. What are the benefits in your mind of the acceptance of this kind of technology? Because we've seen over the past 10 years widespread adoption more so. What do you think the key benefits of that are?
Right. So when you're thinking about the benefits of this, you're thinking about like more people using it is not a bad thing for a variety of reasons. The primary reason is we want it to succeed as a media, right? You're bringing me on your podcast, right? I must be interesting in some respect. And it's really this embodiment, which is what makes XR so special, right? There's not a lot of this like third person that works in XR, but what really works is you are and a verb, right? Or you are able to control time by how fast you move your body, right? You are a convenience store clerk and can do whatever you want. Those kind of things. And so we want that media to succeed. So more people is just going to get that kind of feedback loop and reach that critical mass. And then from a market standpoint too, right? Everyone should want more people. And the reason why is because more people allows for a niche to exist, right? So if you're a controller person who's like a fighter pilot and you can flip upside down and not get sick, you want more people to be in VR because it means that there will be more people like you inherently, which opens it up to more developers being able to sustain themselves, right? And ultimately, I just think there's a lot of really cool and unique things that you can only do in XR. And the higher fidelity and the more we're pushing this technology, the more this is proving itself.
Yeah, and there's definitely tons of appeal to it, not just for, as you mentioned, just for games, but for other industries that could use it for testing or use it for other purposes. But when you get down to it, what do you think the appeal is of games like a job simulator or a vacation simulator, games that have just gained huge traction over the past few years in terms of just public adoption?
I mean, it's embodiment, it's role playing, right? Ultimately, if you look at the games that consistently remain as premier games, as top sellers, story can be an element, but it's not the primary element. And a lot of times when you look at single player games, story is the primary element, right? Or multiplayer games, competition is the primary element, right? But not in VR, that's not the same. Yes, there are competitive games. Yes, there are these story driven games. But again, what it is like, you want to feel as if you're doing these things. And so, Job Simulator, right, is a game where you can be in essentially a play set that actually works, and there's no rules telling you can't. Nothing stops you from doing anything, right?
Right.
At every turn, not only are you not stopped, you're encouraged. And you're encouraged to delve deeper into that. And those are the kind of things that really work, right? And when you look at the top sellers, right, you see games where it's like, you are a medieval knight and you get a sword fight and you get to do all that stuff that you've dreamed about doing since you were a little kid, playing knights and kings and all that. Or you're in the Matrix and you get to dodge bullets, or you are like basically Spider-Man, right? Like some of those games really go all out, right? And if you look at a game like Gorilla Tag, right? Gorilla Tag centers on this interesting style of movement. But again, it's like you and your friends are these like goofy apes who have to use their arms to move around the environment. And it's no wonder when you take that step back why those type of games at least have the initial appeal. Right. And why they bring people in. So what makes VR so unique is it's not that you are somewhere. It's that you get to be something somewhere. Right. You are this in this place. Right. And that's really special and something only VR can do.
Yeah. And that alteration is a big part of it. It's kind of taking you from your current landscape, dropping you into a completely new world where you mentioned before, it's customizable. You can kind of move whatever you want to move. Theoretically, you can do whatever you want to do. So it's very exciting as a transmission point from, actually gaming, sitting on the couch to kind of getting up and being fully immersed in a new world. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the gaming industry just in general, because back in 2015, as an independent company with Owlchemy, when you came in, you mentioned that Job Simulator was launched. You're working on the Rick and Morty game. what was the game industry landscape like back then, would you say, compared to right now? And how has that changed?
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely a different time. I think some of the biggest differences, right, were like we were on the cusp of the rise of platforms. At the time, there was a lot of independent games. I think, especially when you look at the VR industry, right, is like there's this huge amount of money in this like free to play was the thing, right? Now we have live services, which is like similar, but a little different, right? And so this like big push in these like free to play mobile games had a ton of money, but then there was kind of space for these like smaller independent games to exist, although that space was starting to close a little bit. And so 2015, right, we were like looking at something that we didn't realize was about to happen, right? And an interesting story at that time to tell you where the gaming industry was is 2016, PAX West, right? We had a booth. We were part of the Adult Swim Cartoon Network booth. Huge booth, showing off Rick and Morty, all these stalls. Down the hall from us was a small, like 2 wide booth, and that was Fortnite.
Okay.
Because it was the old PvE Fortnite, right? And so, you look at what the industry is today and what Fortnite represents, especially like now where they've cut a deal with all of Disney, and you look at where gaming has gone, where you have these big centralized platforms, right? Thinking about Xbox and its Game Pass as a platform, right? You have Roblox as a platform, and obviously Fortnite and UEFN and those as like interesting platforms, right? So we were like predating that era. And so now we're in just like this completely different ecosystem where, there are these kind of games, but then there's also this like larger platform concept looming in the background, ever present.
Yes. And, talking about today, things don't seem to be going very well at a lot of larger gaming companies. Like recently, Sony's had to let go of a lot of people. Things aren't going too hot, kind of across the board at the bigger gaming companies. And you mentioned kind of catering to a niche. Do you think that it's important today in gaming to kind of try to target these niche audiences instead of kind of going for broke and going for everybody at the same time?
I think it's a losing battle to go for everybody at the same time, right? It's like buying a lotto ticket, but the lotto ticket costs you $100 million or $500 million, right? When you think about it, there's these statistics that come out that like 30% of PlayStations only play Call of Duty or only play Madden or whatever, right? That's not a market. You can't get those people to leave. Like you need to think of those people like they're soccer fans, right? They like soccer, right? Or they like Major League Baseball.
Right.
You're not going to convince them over to your like, I don't know, ultimate frisbee league that's like fledgling but starting up, right? You might get them to add it on to that, but again, it's just not a place to come from. And even they didn't come from that, right?
Yeah.
Call of Duty was a World War II first-person shooter forever, and it grew into that. And I think the problem is that, people see basically the cathedrals of video games that have been built over the last decades, right? Literal decades. And they go, well, it's just a big building. I could just pour enough money into this and I can make a big building. But it's not. It was built up from a smaller group over an incredibly long period of time to become what it is. And so these companies are struggling because they all hope they can just, strike gold, right? And back to my Fortnite thing, it's almost like this perfect synchronous. It's like the difference is that Epic was building something and they were just trying to get it to stick. They weren't sitting there saying like, okay, we will take in all the factors of today and keep pouring it in. They were like, this PvE thing isn't sticking, but Battle Royale is. What if we adapted it to this? That's not what companies would do today. What they would do today is they would be like, delete that game and fire everyone.
Yep.
And start up a new game where we hire a bunch of people, and that'll be $250 million. At Alchemy, right, we think about the long game a lot, and we think about kind of how to have an impact and how to build something that has value to our players, right? And then, we assume, and it's worked out pretty well so far, that if we could get a group of people that is sizable, but not the mass market, that really enjoy our product, we can grow from there. We can make something that people find valuable, that they enjoy, and it'll make us money.
Yeah.
And it'll get bigger, right?
Right.
We just lost the plot. somewhere along the way, the whole industry at the highest levels decided that the only way out of the pit is to just keep digging.
You're right. Right. And keep investing and keep trying to throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks.
But it's not stuff you're throwing at, like, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, right?
Millions of dollars equals stuff.
Right. It's like, I don't know, go literally do anything else with that money. If you think video games is a get rich quick scheme, you are in the wrong business.
And that's kind of something I wanted to hit on too, because it seems like that there is this constant hunger to innovate from the audience, but not necessarily a hunger to innovate from these larger studios. How much of a pressure do you think there is in your studio to keep trying something new and to keep traversing new ground?
You know, I think the hunger comes again from the amount of money you're talking about, right? Is like, if I came to you and said, you know, John, I'm going to give you, $200 million, right?
That'd be really
Don't
nice.
screw up. Yeah, I know. It'd be really nice for like a short period of time. They get an ulcer, right? It'd be like, don't screw this up, right? So I think the hunger from players to innovate is the same hunger that developers feel, right? And we talk a lot about this at Owlchemy. It's like, we know what type of games we make. And so we try to do like one or two unique and innovative things, like big innovations on a game, one or two. Because if you do too many, you kind of like fall too far and you basically... like your studio is really good at something and now you're suddenly like going from manufacturing cars to manufacturing a toothbrush, and it's very confusing and difficult. Mm-hmm. So we try to like slowly move, and that way also for the people who love our games, our players, they know, okay, it's going to be centered around this thing and it'll have these kind of unique things, right? Like we did a lot on story on Cosmonious High, and we did a lot on, characters and character interaction, for instance, right? And those are kind of two bigger things that we focused on. But yeah, I think the reason why you don't have an appetite to innovate is the same reason why, anyone doesn't have an appetite. Like when you spend enormous money on something, you don't want to risk it, right? You want to make sure it's going to work, which is also just like a silly thing, right? And this is a problem. I mean, we could say games, but this is a problem across the entertainment industry, right? Is
sure
a lot of companies that are hoping that video games works like drilling for oil, where they're like, well, we went out and we prospected and we looked and we found we're like 100% sure that there's oil under here. So we're going to spend like $1 billion with this super expensive thing. We're going to drill down and then the money just pumps right out. And it's like, taste is fickle, right? What consumers like is not what you'll expect. And who the tastemakers are changes. And some people are evergreen and some people aren't. And we all hope in our career we can have more than just one hit, and that's what we keep trying to do.
I feel like there's this feeling of, it worked once, so it'll work again. And that seemed to have been kind of like what you were hitting on earlier, the motto for a lot of these larger companies. We see a new Call of Duty every year. We see a new Madden every year. If it keeps working, why fix it? But what are the goals for Owlchemy moving forward? Where do you think y'all are going in the future? Because I really do enjoy what you said about adding one or two new small things each time. Because if you add too much, probably will be overwhelming. But if you add just enough, there's just enough to kind of thread the needle through the next phase, right?
Oh, yeah. I think a big thing to just remember is that, like, players are smart, right? They know what you're doing, right? You can't really pull the wool over your eyes. That's what the customer is always right phrase was about. It wasn't about like customers throwing fits in the store. It was about if people aren't buying your stuff, they don't want it, right? They're right. So, our players, they know what they like and they know what they want to play and they're smart, right? And I think that's generally true across video games. And so for Owlchemy, right, our next game is focused on multiplayer and hand tracking. I think that's like the big innovative steps. We haven't announced anything more than that yet. But, multiplayer is really interesting to us, right? And we've been asked for it. Like, can you please add multiplayer? And it's like, it's so difficult in VR more than anything, because we've done multiplayer before, a lot of us in our careers before we were at Owlchemy, right? And that's hard enough, right? But like Halo, for instance, the way Halo works is it basically just sends what you pushed on the controller to the other console. And then the other console basically like virtually pushes the buttons, right? So it's almost like you're controlling an RC car, right, on somebody else's console. And that's like pretty simple. But like what we have to do, we can't do that. We got no buttons, right? We got none of that. So we got to send everybody's individual joints. And it's not like we have like, oh, what are you doing right now? I'm running, I'm jumping, and the computer can make it up. It's like, no, we have to send every knuckle on your hand across the internet and your head position and what you're saying in VoIP and all of that. So it's this like deceptively difficult challenge. I can't wait when we're ready to show everybody stuff, I think we've done a great job with it. And then like, we're Alchemy, so we want to like break these rules and be like, because the first thing you think of is like, okay, absolutely don't make players cross into each other's space. That'd be a really bad idea. But we're like, what if they do a little bit? Like, that'll be okay, right? And so, yeah, simple things like throwing something from one person to another is super difficult in VR and things like this. So that's kind of what we're focused on and really exploring that space and seeing where we can go from there.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to you. That sounds really, really difficult, right? All like the small details that somebody like me would never think about in a game are probably your day-to-day and is 12 hours a day. Last few things I wanted to talk about with Owlchemy. The Google acquisition back in 2017, what has that meant for the company? Have things changed since then? Or do you find that you're able to now access a lot of more technologies and fundings that you maybe haven't been able to access before?
So I think if you were like average employee, nothing has changed, right? I mean, we switched who gives our benefits, right? We switched some of those things, right? Because we're like Google employees, but largely we operate independently. We meet with them, we discuss them, we discuss our plans, and we make sure that we're all on the same page, right? I don't think that Owlchemy could go off and make like a chainsaw blood horror game. But it also doesn't fit our vibe recently. We've definitely tended towards more all ages content. So yeah, for the average employee, not a whole lot's changed. And then for those of us who are kind of leading and talking with Google, it's great. We get to talk with them about strategy and some other things. But again, ostensibly, we like control our own destiny here. And largely, we've been successful at what we've done post-acquisition, right? Like every game after Rick and Morty. So that's Vacation Simulator, that's the Infinite Overtime and Back to Job updates for our 2 games, and Cosmonious High, were all launched post-acquisition. So we've been able to definitely make that work. And yeah, I think the nice part, the thing that Google provides us is it makes us able to make decisions without like the specter behind us of, oh God, what is the exact amount of cash we have in the bank, right? And, we're not like super reliant on Google in that respect. It's more of a safety net and we just know it's there. And so it allows us to do things like we're going to decide to do things long term and focus on what growth looks like over a period of time instead of how are we going to make payroll tomorrow.
That's great. That sounds like a good relationship you got going there. It's very, very good for the industry too. And last thing I wanted to talk about is, do you have anything that you're excited about coming up soon? Do you have any games that you're about to announce or kind of any innovations that you've been really excited to talk about?
I mean, we have lots of stuff that we're really excited to talk about. I think that, the near future is going to be very exciting for Owlchemy, but unfortunately, I can't really discuss it. It's not quite there yet, but I can tell you from what I've been seeing internally day in and day out and working on, I think there's some really exciting stuff on the horizon here.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Andrew. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you and hope to see some of these games out real soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, that'll do it for us today. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot Podcast Network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clark. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email, and we'll see you Monday. Hey, everybody, I got a great podcast to tell you about. It's called Truth, Lies, and Work, and it's brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. On this show, you can join husband and wife team Al and Leanne Elliott as they dispel myths, impart wisdom, and answer all your questions about finding, keeping, and motivating great people. They actually just did an episode with John Smith, who is the manager and agent of famous Argentinian soccer player Diego Maradona. He talks about in this episode how he was able to manage the global superstar, athlete, celebrity that Maradona is and was. It's a great listen. You better get out there and check it out. And you can listen to Truth, Lies, and Work wherever you get your podcasts.